Welcome to Digging Deeper Ag Chats with Al. Today we have a special guest, Mark Coleman. Mark is a fifth-generation farmer, agribusiness specialist, and an advocate for resilience and sustainability in agriculture. He brings experience from both on-farm operations and community leadership roles. This episode, Making Decisions During a Crisis, Mark will share his journey from growing up on a family farm in Lacola, facing droughts and bushfires, and making bold decisions that shaped his future. He relocated his family to the Northern Territory during tough drought years and had to rebuild his farm after the 2006 fires. Mark's story is one of perseverance and strategic thinking. And on top of all this, Mark is a councillor for the Wellington Shire, where he is a great advocate for the farming community. Mark has also played a key role in the inspiration of this podcast, recognising the need for a platform to provide timely and relevant information to the farming community. His idea is that farmers can access valuable insights and practical advice when they need it most. We'll also discuss the importance of mental resilience, learning from experience, and how making timely decisions, right or wrong, can be the key to survival and success in agriculture. Mark's insights are invaluable for farmers looking to future-proof their operations. So grab a cuppa, sit back and join us as we dig deeper with Mark Coleman. Mark, welcome to the podcast, Digging Deeper.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Mark, we'd like to get to know you. A lot of people do in this community know you well, but can you just share for our listeners a bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. As I said, I've been, forefathers come here in the 1868, come out of Ireland, off farming in Ireland, so I don't know how many generations we go back there, but a long time. So we've run a family farm after my father passed away in 1984, so I've been running the family farm at Lacola all that time. And as you know, with agriculture, things get tight from time to time. And I was newly married, and we had my first daughter Molly and one on the way. And just to give you an idea, so I've got three kids, Molly, Bonnie and Jack. And we're able to, with the drought, things were going pretty tough, so I worked off farm for eight or 9 months, and now it's still in the drought, and I said we're not going any further. So we sold half the cows for basically nothing, $227 in fact, for over 200 head of cattle. Within a fortnight I was in the Northern Territory on a broadacre cropping farm, and never looked back. It's the best thing I ever did. And
So at that stage you already had your three kids?
Yeah, I already had two.
Two?
Yeah, well, one was born in Catherine,
yep.
The wild one.
Yeah.
Then later on, young Jack come along, basically 10 years later. So, Jack's 17 now, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So picked your whole family up and moved up there. And was that because you had to get away from the drought, or you just didn't see viable?
Yeah, one thing going back to my Marcus Oldham was to make a decision and stick to it. And we give it a bit of thought, but it was tough at the time. But once you've done it once, it's very, very easy. And I think it's making those tough decisions and do it early. And anyway, we come back from that basically debt-free. The farm was debt-free, and whereas a lot of my mates and even my cousins and uncles and whatever, and that whole valley, some of these people first time in their life were in overdraft, and some of them never got out of it, never got out of the debt. Yeah.
So you said the valley. Whereabouts is your farm?
Yeah, it's Lacola. So we're talking McAllister Valley.
Your parents, or you said five generations, were they all in that area, or have they?
Pretty much Glenmaggie.
Yeah.
Glenmaggie, and we've still got a lot of relatives around there. My McAllister Irrigation District, Maffra, Newry, and Riversley, and places like that, still farming.
So you left with your young family up to the NT. Who looked after the farm while you were going?
I basically destocked it, and I think I left about. I might have been 40, 50 cows left, and just opened the gates.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just opened the gates. And I did come back from time to time, and my younger brother, he was working down the road at the time, so he was doing a bit poking around, but not a lot. There wasn't a lot to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we've got 2,000 acres there, so they had plenty of room to bounce around.
Yep. Yeah, they would have been fat cows by the time we got back.
Yeah, well, at least we had, we still had that breeding stock,
Yep.
that core herd, and that's what we started with there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on Marcus Oldham.
Yep.
When did you go there? And do you want to share a couple of stories from Marcus Ullman? Because I know we've had some kids recently through the Gippsland Ag Group here at the research farm, and it's still going strong.
Yeah.
I know you're still in contact with those guys, so share a little bit about that.
I did an apprenticeship. When my father was alive, he said, no, your boys are going farm. Do you have a trade? So I did trade at SEC, and that was fantastic. Learned a lot. 4 years and give it 1 week, and I give them a notice, and I jumped motorbike and went to the Northern Territory. I was working up there, and I was up there for 9-10 months, and the fellow I was working with said, what are you going to do now? And he said, I said, oh, I'll probably go back and go farming. And he said, mate, you need an education. And I was really a bit put back. I was basically 20. And anyway, he says just to go to Marcus Oldham. So I wrote them a letter from the Northern Territory back then, and they accepted me. And just going back, my writing skills and reading skills are absolutely atrocious. Really, really ordinary. Anyway, I went to Marcus Oldham, really battled for the first 3 months, but by the end of it, just loved it.
Yeah.
Just the experience, the diversity, the camaraderie, and from where these fellas and girls come from all over the world, and you learn as much off them as you did off the lecturers. It's absolutely fantastic training ground.
How many of those guys are you still in contact with?
Oh, probably 8 or 10.
Yeah.
But in saying that, if I occasionally ring someone you haven't spoken to for 8 years, if you need to know something, which is really good, and if they don't, they'll know someone who can. So but we haven't had a reunion for a while, but I'm sure we'll have one shortly. But COVID sort of stuffed that up. But it's a very good alumni. Yeah.
Yes.
People.
Yeah. Still is today, from what I understand. Yeah. So one of the things you just touched on before that from Marcus Oldham days, you said make a decision and go with it. And so that was during the drought. You made a decision. Yeah. Looking back, does it matter if you make the right decision or bad decision, as long as you're making a decision?
Just make one. Make one. You see a lot of people procrastinate and hang back, and by that time they've missed the boat. And even the last jet we've just gone through. It was bloody tough too. Yep. Really tough. And we. Once again, still working full time, running that drought. My mother just recently passed away. In a state situation, it was really, really ordinary, and you just you battled through regardless. And once again, destocked, sold a lot of breeding cows early, but never sold a heifer through the drought. Talking once again, your mates and people you talk to, you talk to really good farmers when things like this happen. And one of the fellas said, well, if you're keeping your heifers, run them like sheep, drench them well, keep their health up, and they'll be fine. And we did. So I was able to step out of that drought, and we were rejoining 220-30 cows head straight at the end of that drought. So it's about how you get out of it the other end. Yep. Those heifers, I still remember I'd give them, in this mob there might have been 80, and I would just give them a fresh paddock and a round bale once a week. That's all they got. Yeah. And so had it rotated about 6 paddocks, and it's amazing how they did. Fresh paddock, had good water, made sure it had good water. I spent a lot of money on dams, keeping them clean. It's very important, that good water.
Yeah. Now is this, we're talking the 2019 drought?
Yeah. Once kept, as you know, it just crept in, and for me also coordinating the drought for Wellington Shire at the time, it was very daunting. I was averaging 40 calls a day. Right. Had the highest phone bill for Wellington Shire.
Never a good call either, I imagine.
No, but once again, you're helping people out, and you learn as well.
We'll jump back up to Northern Territory. What were you doing up there, apart from raising young kids?
Yeah, sure. So when I worked for the same fellow who worked for an 85 he's the same bloke giving me the advice about Marcus Oldham. So,
right.
So when I went up, he said, do you want to go to stop camp? I said, no, I want to go and sit on the tractor.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, just to give an idea, the one paddock there, it wasn't the actual part of this paddock. It was you did 8 laps a day in this tractor. Big paddock, 525 horsepower Steigers, absolutely amazing horsepower.
AC, I hope.
Oh, yeah, air conditioning. Oh,
Yeah.
shit, yeah, you couldn't operate without that. But and that was really good. Then they realised they could actually fix shit
Yeah.
and calibrate machinery and all that. So a lot of the time was basically setting the gear up for the other drivers,
Right.
and which was great too. So you still sit in the seat, but once again, had a really good workshop basically myself, so I didn't have to talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great experience. In hindsight, I should have spent a few more years there.
Yeah. And what were they doing there?
Oh yeah, well, broadacre crop. What we're growing is stuff called cavalcade, which is like a tropical lucerne,
Right.
and it was used. We'd bale it up, and it went into and they made cubes for the live export boats.
Right.
Yeah, really good high protein tucker. But we're also growing seed crops, grass seed crops,
Yep.
as well. That would then harvest those grass seed to then sow other parts of that station.
Right.
Like at the time, Tipperary was 20,000 square kilometres.
Rather large area.
Big area needed cattle at the time.
Was that irrigation?
No, we did have some irrigation,
Yeah.
and I was growing some extra soybeans under that, but
Yeah.
it's another story.
Yeah.
But the rainfall, you're looking at 1.5 metre rainfall. you
So
know.
yeah.
So there's a lot of science in actually how you plough those paddocks. It's interesting. A lot of it was done on the contour,
Yeah.
all lasered. And interesting, used to be able to see it from Google Earth, and future farmers have basically destroyed some of the work we've done now.
Just because they flattened it too much, or
Well, basically, they didn't contour plough it.
yeah.
And now you can see the erosion from Google Earth. So it just goes to show about farming practices.
Yeah. Well, when we spend less time in the paddock in the tractor and more time making decisions with our pens and paper, sometimes we miss those really critical things being in the paddock.
Yep.
I remember you telling me a story about racing a rainstorm. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we used to, going back to these contours, we'd leave hard stand areas of metres wide. We're talking 50, 80 metres wide of hard stand in these paddocks. And a couple of reasons to erosion control, but also when these rainstorm events hit, you had minutes to get out of that paddock and into this hard stand. And
Yeah.
one particular, actually it was a Saturday afternoon, I was calibrating this cedar. That was a Canadian disc cedar, about 50 foot wide.
Yeah.
And we just calibrated this cedar. We had 2 inches of rain in 20 minutes. That was Saturday.
Yeah.
By the time we got out there Monday, that cavalcade was out of the ground an inch high.
Oh, really?
Just the rewarding nature of that country that you can actually, it's so challenging but so rewarding when you
get it right.
Not beat it, but work with it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah.
And soil temperatures up there would have been.
Oh mate, you drop your Leatherman on the ground, you couldn't pick it up.
Yeah, right.
You had to. Yeah, you just could not pick it up within minutes. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of those farming practices can you bring back to Lycola?
Well, the contour stuff definitely.
Yeah.
And once again, I've done a lot of contour work at Lycola as well, keyline systems and whatever. So there's a lot of similarities. But
Yeah.
the gear at Lycola, I started with a 6. I remember I started, and I still got a 6 foot bloody Conochet. So,
Yeah.
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 And here we are up there. Our widest bit of gear up there was 75 feet.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's a bit different. And the thing about Lycola, and I've also got another block down there at Tanamba where I just love sitting on that tractor because I don't have to worry about wombat holes. You're not worried about gullies. You're not going to fall off the bloody hill.
Yeah.
When I'm mowing or sowing in grass or whatever down on that block, I just love that flat country.
Just all works. No stones, no logs.
No logs, no wombat holes, nothing. Yeah.
But when did you come back from Northern Territory?
I come back in. It was just 98, end of 98, nearly 99. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you've mentioned here that the 2006 fires
Yeah.
and then the floods in 07.
Yeah.
You get back, you farm for a little while under good conditions, I'm assuming?
Yeah, they were good conditions. Yeah, really good. And got those cows back and just beautiful mob of cows. Because we've still got bush lease at the top, those cows, I called them all up. There's no fencing out there. We leased 25 square kilometres out there.
Yeah.
And so they're all called up. And you wouldn't believe it. We'll just, me and my wife, we'll driving those cattle out. And we just commented how good they looked, those cows. And within basically 3 weeks' time, they're all gone. Lost 260 head in the fire.
Oh, they were burnt, were they?
They basically, most of them were killed by the superheated air.
Yeah, right. Cook their lungs, or is that
well,
actually what happens?
Yeah, basically, it kills them instantly. And when we come across them, they're lined up in rows with the mother and the calf beside them, and there'd be in one row there might be 20, 30. The next row there'd be 20, 30, and it took me about 10 years to talk those without crying.
Yeah.
It's just one of those moments in life, and until you've been through that. And the biggest thing for me was how the hell we're going to educate these cows. The education about that high country, education about how they farm in that. It's different down on the flat. You could buy cows out of the sale yard tomorrow, and they're going to do.
Yeah.
Whereas up there, it takes generations, and it did. It took 12 years to get back to that generation, those cows, and we're back there now, and that's why always so nervous when you look about land. That's why I'm very passionate about land management, how these forests are managed, because with those fuel loads, there wasn't the fuel loads up on top that killed them. It was the fuel loads in the subalpine areas that actually cooked them. And out of that, I ended up with about 30 breeders that I left out of those fires, and I started with 30.
As in, they were further down, or they just managed to survive the fires?
They basically managed. There wasn't a brush on a tail. There was teats burnt off. There was cows with burns. And incredibly how well they survived. Cows blind, and because they're in the high country, had some really good cohort of cousins and whatever, and rivers. So you've got to remember, a drought basically donated me the best hay they could produce, which is just incredible, and that's what kept them alive. And that's why I started back with 30 cows. So that when you've had those life changing things that happen to you, nothing's ever hard again. And that's why I think I can relate to when these droughts do hit people, and they're going through, they're suffering. I can relate to say, this is it takes time.
Yeah, and when it happens to yourself, I've helped out a bunch of mates after the recent fires, 2019 I think they were.
Yeah.
And still, the smell of smoke haunts some of those guys.
Definitely. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Same. Even the ute was through the fires. This old Hilux. It smelled the smoke for 3 years. So every time you walked in the door, it reminded you.
Yeah, a cruel reminder.
Cool. Yeah, and even now, we've had 4 or 5 fires, around Lycola this summer. You can't let it. You've just got to take a breath and think, I'll be okay.
Back when you went through there, what was available for farmers back then?
Oh, mate, I think we might have been $1,500 to basically fill your water tanks.
Right.
There was no blaze aid, there was no fencing, whatever. Anyway, a group of 4-wheel drive people come up later on. This is after the floods as well. Got to remember, we had the fire, which is in December. On the 28th of February, we're having a fire recovery barbecue. We had 32 millimetres of rain, and that's what caused the flash flooding in Lycola. There was cars floating down the main street of Lycola off 32 mil of rain.
Just all run off?
Just all run off, because that landscape's completely denuded. It's hygroscopic. The water just runs off. Then we had that rain event, so that basically blocked the main Jamison Road. Watched that out. Then we had the June, July, we had the rain event that basically that washed out Trains Bridge, and so we had no access to Lycola. So that hour drive to the farm in the winter turned around to a 5-hour.
Right.
To actually get to finish fencing and shit. So it was challenging, and once again you're away from the family, all that time, because you couldn't get back readily, and you come down and so I was rebuilding, and the first thing I did, before I rebuilt a fence, I was rebuilding soils, I was rebuilding pasture.
Right.
Contour ripping it, stabilising those soils. So I think that's really important to look at. Once again, that I use Marcus Holt, it's about making the right decisions.
Yeah.
Whereas I know a lot of people, the first thing they do is start banging in fence posts, but think about, is that really the best thing? Because you've got time to redesign your farm, laneways, but your soils is priority.
Yeah.
Getting back to the crew, there's these 4-wheel drive, and they were really lovely people, but they didn't have a fence.
Yeah, right.
I was still finding bits and pieces today. How the hell did that wire stay there? Because they've just looped it around. But great, well-meaning. But it was interesting. They come back up about 4 years later for one weekend, just to say how we're going, and their fencing had improved. Oh,
so they continue to help people out.
They continue, and it was about 4 different 4-wheel drive groups, And which I kept contacted with for years. But it was just, whereas now you got Blaze Aid, you got so much more support. Whereas back then we had nothing.
Yeah. Back then, mental health wasn't really on the agenda of many people.
No, this is a really good point actually. This is the week after the fires. I think it was a Thursday when it hit us. And one of the mates I was with, it was only me and him on the farm at the time, and that night we finally got some mobile coverage, and he rang back and he'd lost all he's a chippy.
Yeah.
Lost all his trucks, all his trailers, all his tools in a fire that came into Cowar. So for me, I felt absolutely shit house. Anyway, we'll as I say, the following Thursday, the stump's burnt for months, and we grabbed a couple of chops. We're burning on a burning stump on Thursday with a can of beer.
Making the best of a bad situation there, Mark.
Yeah. Didn't have to light the fire. And we said, well, next week, why don't we invite Anthony down? And one of the neighbours up the road, I thought, no, why don't we invite them all down? At the time, there might have been 6 or 8 of us in the whole district left. So we did that every Thursday, regardless. Anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks in, a couple of them didn't turn up. And we got on the phone and said, where are you? Oh, I didn't feel like coming tonight. I said, mate, this is not voluntary, this is compulsory.
Right.
So we went and got them.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, and we did. And by the end of this went on for months, and by the end it was up to 30.
Yeah.
Attend these nights, and we'd have a few beers and a bit of a laugh, and I think it was really important about the mental health. It's about your mates and sort of grassroots driven, how you get through this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's a really lovely segue into the Gippsland Ag Group.
Yep.
Because that was on the back of a drought.
Yep.
And a couple of farmers, exactly what you did, decided to get together. We've been chatting individually.
Yep.
How can we do this as a group?
Yep.
And make it meaningful? And were you part of that early stages?
Yeah, I went to the first one.
So tell us about that. There was a bunch of farmers that got together and said, we've got to form a public meeting.
Yeah.
Now, public meeting, you might get 20 or 25 people there.
Yeah.
Tell us actually what happened.
Yeah, it was. I did not expect it was. Across the road there in Sale at the Matador or Commodore, whatever it's called these days, and I think about 80 or 90 turned up.
Yeah.
And from all over, and it was a really good vibe in the room, and people could say, "Yeah, we need this.
Yeah.
We need this." And to Trev and Jen and to actually to keep that momentum going is just incredible, and that's how it sort of started. And look at it now. Never look back.
Yeah, so that was roughly 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That first meeting happened, and the Gippsland Agriculture Group formalised as an incorporation, and this really has every year it's gone from strength to strength. And this is why we have the ability to sit in this studio now and record this. And the reason that we've actually got you in here today is because maybe 18 months ago we were having a conversation. I got this idea, Al, and the reason you're actually the very first episode that's going to air, and we wanted it that way because without your creative thoughts and thinking for drought readiness, fire preparation, things like that, we wouldn't be here. So touched on it a little bit before. What are your early thoughts about the formation of this?
The reason we're doing this podcast is this is pretty important. It is so when the media see an announcement, the state, federal or whatever announce that there's $10 million for Gippsland or $1 million for Wellington Shire, quite often it's not for farming. Sometimes it could be something completely different, but that's where some of these calls, one day I got 80 calls because of really bad media.
Yeah. And
that's part of this podcast, is to get an awareness channel that we can actually, that can be the go-to. It's about preparation is the key, and I think if we can get people prepared for droughts, as far as, we talk about mental health and there's so many things. But if you've got the preparation right, you've got the foundations right in your business, your farm, that's 90% of it. And I just think, with this podcast, it's about getting out to the audience that may not normally relate to certain media or certain programs. We're trying to make it as grassroots as we possibly can, real people. And just going back to the phone calls I received, in my role at the Shire, people for the first time they've actually rang the Shire for anything.
Right.
And some great people. You don't get me wrong, absolutely fantastic people. But for them to actually to do that is very, very challenging. So we want to make this as genuine and as easy to listen to as we can. And so when we do have these disasters, we're going to have more, whether it's fire, flood, drought, disease, God knows what else. This will be the go-to to get the real facts and have a credibility from real farmers, real local farmers. And with Gippy Ag, to their credit, some of the best farmers I've ever met, that are part of this group and share, willing to share. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to know, that everyone that works here actually runs a farm outside of here, and so we feel the struggles. We know the struggles just as much as the people we're trying to help along the way. I can make dozens of phone calls to some of the biggest, most successful producers in this region, and say, I've got this problem with my couple of hundred sheep. What would you do? And they're more than willing to take time out of their day to walk you through it. And that's true, I think, for everyone that's a member in this group. And it's a philosophy that we make sure that we hold in really high esteem. And so part of this podcast is actually that, sharing some of that knowledge. Not everyone can afford, especially in this time when we're tight with commodities and inputs are right up. Listening the tractor on those Lacola hills. But then having that community around is really important, especially, like you said, if we do, which we will, East Gippsland, Gippsland in general, very volatile place to farm. We're going to go through it again, and so if we're working towards being prepared for that, then it's going to hold us in a better position, both mentally and physically, as we go through those events. So, we haven't actually touched really on your other role in the community.
I work in Wellington Shire in the business development team, look after mainly all the agribusiness focused, but also the timber industry as well. So I have a lot of finger in a lot of pies, but some other industries, other big businesses as well we deal with, in the business development team. So people say, how do I do it? So I know I'll probably get the sack. So when I'm up farming,
we can edit this one out, Mark, if we need to.
When I'm farming, when I'm sitting on that tractor, when I'm feeding it that hay, when I'm driving to Lycola, I'm quite often thinking about work issues, like Shire issues or whatever. When I'm at the Shire, quite often I'm thinking about farming issues, how I could do something a bit better. So it's about, and I think it's really important. I learnt this. How I started at the Shire back in after the fires. I basically did a role called Rural Skills Connect for 18 months, where I was retraining farmers and farmers' families throughout Gippsland. And that gave me a great network of people. What I learned from that was, because you're off farm, and even some of these farmers I able to help upskill and whatever, a lot of them are still working off farm 1 day a week or 1 week a month now, because they realise they can make better decisions because it gives them time to think. So unfortunately, some farmers will just get in there, head down, arse up every day, thinking they're actually achieving whatever. But sometimes they just pulled up and think, do I really have to do this today? Or would I be better off doing this or that? So it's about making those decisions.
We were talking to a person just the other week and saying the thing that they're starting to do is work-life balance as ag people. When tough times come, we just work more and more, and sometimes not only for our own personal and family health, we need to step back and have a look at the whole big picture rather than just fixing fences, feeding cattle, because we can chew up a lot of time and mental space with just doing that. So
definitely.
We've actually come close to the end of our episode. Is there anything else that you feel you need to share? I know you're always thinking. You've probably got about 10 things rolling around at the minute.
There's plenty going on, but I just use my oldest daughter Molly, because I was head down, arse up, doing 2 jobs, 3 jobs, whatever. She left home to go to uni. I didn't know her as well as I should have.
Right.
And I think if young farmers are out there, for God's sake, make sure that you don't do that. You know, my youngest son Jack, who's 17, he's probably sick to death of me because I spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
You know, because I've realised the errors of my ways.
Yes.
Because you think you know, we've been through all that stuff, and I remember sitting on the couch after the fires and the floods, and young Bonnie at the time, she said, "Dad, I haven't seen much of you lately." You know, and this is from a 4-year-old daughter, 5-year-old daughter. You know, you think, wow, that really
Pulls at the heartstrings.
pulls it. You know, and I think it's really important about your family. Your family comes first, and so it's about the journey.
Yeah, and it's a long journey, and it's one that we take our whole family on.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we've got to be mindful of them as much as
definitely
we want fat cattle or sheep. So
that's right, and get the communications open.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now we have a signature question at the end of each episode. This doesn't have to be farm or ag related, but the question is, what is something that you have learnt recently that surprised you?
You know, I went to the International Fire and Fuel Conference last year in Canberra, and there's always that last 5 minutes where you learn the most. And one of the head fellas said, right now in Australia we spend around 3 to 5% on preparation for fires, and 95 to 97% on fighting fires and recovery. I think that 3-5% planning preparation last year was a real wake-up call to us as a nation.
Yeah.
To think, well, I won't swear, but I'd love to. But how stuffed up that really is.
Yeah.
You know, because we've got to change this.
Do you know you have overall figures what was spent?
Oh no, I haven't. But it's
an astronomical amount of money.
Absolutely. And you know, there was 3 billion animals that were perished in that 3 billion in that 1920 fire. Like, why that? And the smoke plume went around the world twice.
Yeah.
It sits on some of the global carbon maps of just that whole eastern seaboard of Australia, just a blue dot of carbon emitted. For God's sake, you know, in the most fire-prone area of the world, something needs to change before it's way too late.
Yep. What's the steps to changing that from 4% to, what do we want to see, 20%, 50%?
More than 5 anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
well, a couple of percentage on what they spent is going to be a significant amount of money invested, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's just, you know, with their fire breaks, their fuel reduction, their track maintenance. You know, I've spent 3 days up there over the years, and you know, the amount of tracks you could take a Land Cruiser down 10 years ago, we're flat out dragging their motorbikes over logs and under logs.
Yeah.
How are they expected to get in to control those fires? You can't do it all the aircraft. They
No.
think they can. But you have a windy day, all those aircraft are grounded, you're stuffed.
Yeah.
You've got to use every tool in the box.
Yeah. More boots on the ground at the right spots.
Yeah, more boots, not less suits.
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
No, very good. Well, Mark, it's obvious that some of those events that you went through back in 2006 are still actually test you. And it's been a very influential part, and it also seems like it has shaped decisions and work that you're doing now. So we want to thank you from Digging Deeper to actually have this idea of this podcast. You're going to be a regular on here at some stage, I know, because you've got plenty to share and you're very active in the community, and we're very thankful for your advocacy for both Wellington, East Gippsland Shires and beyond. So thank you for coming in, Mark.
No worries. Thanks for having us, and all the best.
Cheers.
Cheers.
A big thank you for tuning in today. And remember, if you have a question about today's episode or a topic you'd like us to cover, reach out to one of our many platforms and join the conversation. We're here because of your passion and commitment to agriculture. Together, we can build a stronger farming future. Next week, we're excited to welcome Chelsea Hare, a local vet who will be joining us on a regular basis to share her expertise on a range of topical animal health issues. Chelsea will also be answering questions, so be sure to send them through to our channel. Livestock health, nutrition, or disease management. She's here to answer it all. Now don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Each episode does go live Friday mornings. I'm your host Alistair. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week on Digging Deeper. Bye for now.
This podcast is made possible by the Future Drought Fund Regional Drought Resilience Planning Program, co-funded by the Victorian and Australian governments.